Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all my blessed beloveds out there in video land. You're watching Living and Thriving with Rusty, and I'm Rusty. We are almost through the season. I can't even believe it. I actually extended the season because I had so many guests, and now we're doing 2 shows a week, and it's just crazy. Today, Art is going to be joining us. Art is going to talk a little bit about what it's like to be in recovery and steps and tips and tricks on being a better version of yourself. Art, whenever you come on, just let us know. He's there somewhere. We'll start a little early. Or maybe not. We'll wait. So after some fun technical stuff, which happened to be my fault this time, unusual, Art's here, and Art has a beautiful dog in the back who just snuck away. So I'm kind of mad about that because I love dogs. I live for dogs. I do.
I have 3 here, so yeah, I'm watching 2 for my girlfriend. I'm up in my cabin in Big Bear. It's too hot in Palm Springs, so I'm up here enjoying the cooler weather.
Yeah, it's about 115 just in the shade here in southern Florida, so I feel you.
Oh, you got humidity though. See, that's
Yeah. I had to actually water my hair down so I didn't look like the Lion King.
well, I think you look nice, so there you go.
Thank you, Art. Good morning.
Good morning.
So you, my friend, have a lot to share with us, and I don't want to get too much into details because I want to hear it from you. So who are you? What do you do, and what makes you you?
Well, thank you for the question. I appreciate it. It's great to be on your show. Thank you for having me. I am a 2-time author on alcohol addiction, 2 books, and also a MC and speaker about addiction to alcohol as well. If you define me today, it's giving back a lot of my time and energy to realize I've been blessed in life, and having been an alcoholic and then recovering and being able to stay sober for almost 11 years. I feel like I've been given a gift that I should probably share. To begin my story with alcohol addiction, I didn't drink for that long. However, I did love it when I did, and I only drank beer, champagne, and wine. But it was enough to cause me to have an illness where I bled out through my throat called esophageal varices, and I recovered from that in the emergency room and intensive care for a few days. Promised to never drink again, but on my 60th birthday, I did a toast. I had a toast with some friends and thought I could have that little sip of champagne, and the next day I was buying it again. And from there, I actually, over a period of 8 months, I kept drinking, and then I contemplated jumping off a bridge in Portland, Oregon. I actually stood on it to jump, and a truck driver came by, and didn't say a word, but he looked at me, and it was like an angel. He just said, "Don't jump, you have a purpose." And so I checked myself in, and I'm blessed now with 11 years of sobriety and 2 books and a mission to talk to people, young kids too. I'm trying to get a high school program going to help people understand that this is a real disease. It's more prominent now than ever, and the pandemic certainly didn't help. So I spend time and energy writing and talking to people about recovery and giving them hope, inspiration, and guidance. I'm an ex-educator and I'm ex-motivational speaker, trainer, national trainer. So my life has treated me extremely well. So I'm going to use those platforms and do what I can.
So, Art, let's get down to the juice. And if you don't want to be squeezed too hard, let me know. But I do ask tough questions, believe it or not. Everybody says I'm too soft.
So it's okay.
But so let's break it down. I've never heard of bleeding out of the throat unless somebody stabbed you. And those, you try not to have those kinds of friends, right? So talk to us. What is this bleeding out of the throat thing? Explain it like I'm a kindergartner.
Okay, well, what happens when I was drinking, I had actually a little bit of an allergic reaction to alcohol. I didn't start really drinking until I was almost 50. Socially, I drank a couple of times, but not much. But I started losing tissue in my throat and didn't know that. And as the tissue disappears in your throat, the blood vessels become exposed. And then just with normal blood pressure and talking and things, they expand often up and down. So I was at a Labor Day party in 2009, and I went to bed that night at a friend's house, and they had a really dark bathroom, so I didn't want to turn any lights on, but they had little night lights. So I started throwing up a little bit, and I eventually realized after the 3rd or 4th time I'd gone back and forth. It didn't taste very good. So I took a baggie out of their kitchen and threw up in it and went outside and held it to a light that I could see, and it was blood. So I woke up my friend and we went to the emergency room at Kaiser Hospital in Long Beach. And they immediately called stat. I was bleeding out and they were trying to get blood into me. I was actually given last rites. They didn't see any hope in getting enough blood in because I was throwing up so much and had been for a while. And some doctor came in as a hero and saved me, and I promised to never drink again. So when these blood vessels break, the only thing they can do go in is they surgically band them. It's like rubber bands. They tie them off so they can't bleed. So over the last 10, almost 11 years, I've had banding done about 5 times because it's just because that tissue is gone and they band, more blood vessels will grow and reconnect, but then they also get exposed to the same thing in my throat. So that's the basic concept of esophageal varices is what it's called.
Holy smokes is all I can say. Like,
Yeah.
wow. I know there's a lot of things I don't know, and I'm grateful because I don't want to be the complete smarty one in the room, but I've never heard of that. That's like mind blowing.
Well,
I mean,
the medical term is esophageal varices. So if you ever want to look it up, that's what it means. And it's not uncommon, but it's usually not alcohol associated necessarily. So mine just happened to be I lost tissue along my throat from the alcohol, and it just caused those blood vessels to pop one day. And they popped so many popped at once. I was just throwing up, big bags of blood. Fortunately, there was a hospital close by. Fortunately, there was a doctor on staff who took the time to reactivate me when other people were starting to give up. There's actually a picture of my first book where I've been giving last rites, and they told my friend at the time that was there, if you want to take a picture of him, you can, because this may be the last picture you have of him.
oh,
So
heartbreaking.
there's stuff going on. So, and you think that would be my story, right? I would quit, and what I did, that was in September, and I went 4 months. But when you have a 60th birthday, that's pretty big. And my friends were trying to be so generous drinking around me, but someone poured me about 1/4 of an inch in the bottom of a tall flute. So it wasn't much, it was just a taste. And unfortunately, when you're an alcoholic, that one little taste, you can't go back and have one drink again. So you just go back into that cycle. And I realized I was in it. So I had to figure out how I was going to get out of this. I had been very successful in life, and I didn't see myself going my whole life being an alcoholic. And so suicide became my next choice. And I literally, go ahead.
So again, back to the hard questions. And again, if I'm squeezing too hard, just raise your hand. With addiction, those of us who study addiction and work with addiction, we understand that addiction is a symptom. It's not the cause.
Correct.
So what happened? I mean, you were wildly successful, and something happened to cause you to sink into the drink, so to speak? Like what is your underlying?
Well, I don't know that I had particularly something I could isolate as an underlying condition. I was, I started socializing a lot in my business success. And most of those were big dinners. I was giving speeches. So there were meetings before where we drank, and then we'd give a speech, there'd be toast. And then afterwards, there'd be an after party. So I found myself wrapped into this cycle. Addiction is a disease. So consequently, somewhere in between the process of enjoying that alcohol at that point in my life, I activated whatever is in my system to allow me to think drinking was okay, and no one could tell me I couldn't. So my mental state went from, and I realized that's why my first book is called Self-Inflicted Death Sentence. At some point, I realized that I was literally drinking and killing myself from alcohol, but I couldn't stop. And when you can't stop, or you don't think you can stop, unless you seek help and admit you have a problem, you're never going to stop. And a lot of people die, obviously, from alcohol addiction. They have an accident, they have suicides. But at some point, my mind caught on to the point I needed to get help. And so I sought it, and I realized I had the problem, and I moved forward from there.
So do you think, you and I both know, being in this world, that the question I'm going to ask is kind of like a 101, okay? So be prepared. With your suicide attempts, do you think that was just the alcohol adding depressive qualities to you? Because we all know alcohol is actually a depressant. So
right. I think that's a fair question. I visited my grandkids is what had happened, and my son wasn't very cordial, didn't want me to be around them. So I left the house not happy. I bought several bottles of champagne. I put them in a cooler next to me. I was driving my Jeep. I was heading up to a house I had in Vancouver, Washington. I probably drank 3 or 4 bottles of champagne on the way. I crossed into this area. I thought about this bridge when I got to it. I thought it was a quick decision. I pulled over my Jeep. I put on my flashers. I stepped out of the Jeep. People started honking. I stood up on this short rail that's on the 205 freeway going from Portland into Vancouver, Washington. But I had stopped at a place where the pylons that supported the bridge were sticking out. So if I jumped, I was going to go down 20 or 30 feet and hit a pylon on the top of a pylon. So I looked down and thought I really screwed this up because I was ready to make that jump really fast. So I had to get down and walk 20 feet in either direction. In the meantime, this truck that I had passed hours earlier was suddenly there. The horn honked. I looked at him. He had a red baseball cap on, kind of a scruffy beard, didn't say a word to me, just piercing blue eyes, looked at me, and his eyes told me not to jump. He had a purpose. So I went and checked myself in.
Good for you. I mean,
And when I got,
that's tough. And now let's get to the exciting part, because the exciting part's always the sprout coming out of the ground, right? You
right.
know, it's not easy being a seed. Anybody tells you that it's easy being a seed, they're on something and they need to go to rehab themselves.
Exactly.
So now you're sprouting. And what's your relationship with your children and your grandchildren now?
You know, it's interesting. I defined addiction as giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing to get everything back. So I had to work hard. My son, it's not an easy task because, first of all, parents, families, and stuff really, they knew my strong personality, my addictive behavior. So they didn't trust that I was actually getting sober. They thought I was probably drinking in the background someplace. So it took a lot of time to build trust. I stayed with groups. I was very fortunate. I was in a VA group for 6 weeks that ended up being 37 weeks because I started writing poetry each week and sharing it with the group. And they started talking. So the counselor asked me to stay and keep writing my poetry. So by helping others, I started helping myself much better. And so my relationship started to expand. My daughter was very quick to receive me. We have the same personality. She has an addictive personality. She grabbed me back and there was no problem. My son, it took him about 4 or 5 years before he really was comfortable. I was not going to drink. And my grandkids were getting a little older. Now they're 16 and 14, but I've been sober for 11 years, so they were pretty young. He just didn't want me to be around him and didn't trust me to be there. Good guy, great man, great son. And I never blamed him for not trusting me because I quit before and I started again. And so he thought that would be my cycle. Friends, I gave up friends that were probably not good for me, and I gained new friends who were good for me. And it's kind of a cycle that you have to go through in order to do that, between AA meetings, between talking with friends, between a sponsor, me becoming a sponsor. You have all these challenges in life that keep you focused on, you have a problem, it's never going to go away, it's one day at a time. Focus on the one day at a time and make it work for you. And now I've earned, my family back. I've been fortunate. I've been on stage talking about this. I just did a speech for the 2021 series for Desert AIDS Project in Palm Springs. I was the first speaker of the year. So I got to get that energy back where I like to share and talk. And I share poetry with people. I'm putting a high school program together, Southern California, so I can go in and talk to kids at school in an auditorium for free. I won't charge for it, to help them understand that you can have a brain, you can be college educated, you can be very successful, but alcohol still can grab you. And what are the early signs and what are the things you can do in your life to help that not occur to you? Because I'm a walking lesson plan. I got the good, bad, and ugly of addiction, and I'm willing to share it for the positive side now. My second book is all about hope. My first book, again, I said I'll show it because you know how that is, right? First book is Self-Inflicted Death Sentence. It's a true story and poetry of sex, alcohol addiction, and recovery one day at a time. This was written over a period of 37 weeks, one poem a week. It's all in poetry, by the way, only book of the kind. And the reason I chose poetry is easy for people to remember a verse than it is to remember a paragraph. The second book is called Free Booze Canceled. I wrote this during the pandemic. I published this in December. And this book is 10 lessons on long-term sobriety. So at the end of each poem that I wrote, there's 3 questions to answer. It's designed for group study, for people in a program that want to read a poem about it, hope and inspiration. This is a great guidebook to show you how you can get to 10 years. So my focus has all been about getting everything back, giving up one thing to get everything back. And I'm not doing anything for the money. I didn't do the book for the money. I'm not doing the speeches for the money. I do them for free. It's time for me to realize I've been blessed. I'm on a second life. And why not share it? I've been on stage for a long time. I like a big crowd. I like an audience. And I have truth to power. I can tell the story with honesty and integrity.
Do you think that as a species, because this is not an American problem at all, it's a
Right.
human problem, do you think that we celebrate too much in the wrong ways?
In a heartbeat, definitely. We are worldwide. We have licensed a drug, alcohol being to me like a drug. We've licensed something worldwide that people can have, enjoy, and to the abundance. You can't go into a restaurant that doesn't serve booze hardly. You have bars on every corner. You have liquor stores in grocery stores. You have liquor stores on every corner, especially in poverty parts of town where alcohol becomes an absorption for pain and anguish on where people are. And we license this, and then we celebrate it, and we look at the non-drinkers being what's wrong with you rather than the drinker being the problem. So we'll judge people. When I first didn't drink and I go places, they said, "What do you mean you're not going to have a drink at a bar?" I said, "Well, I came here with some friends, but I don't drink." And it was almost like they'd look at you kind of like, well, okay, but it was that look that just said, "This is where we drink, you know, so I'm not sure why you're here." So I think we do. I think we celebrate this. We celebrate it everywhere.
Well, and I know that during quarantine, there were some companies that came out with mocktails, alcohol-free alcohol, which it's kind of like when vegan companies come out with chicken and you kind of scratch your head going, well, if you don't
What's
want the
in it?
chicken killed, why are you marketing chicken? Like, for me, I can't wrap my head around that stuff. Do you think that that is beneficial to people who are in recovery, or do you think that it's just placating the disease?
I think it
Tough
can
question.
be. I think yeah. I will have a non-alcoholic beer. There's a new one that's 0.000 across the board that doesn't even have the 0.05 on it. I've done my research on alcohol-free drinks. In the process of elimination, it's really a real beer that they use a magnetic process to take the alcohol out. The reason they have the 0.05 is in case I'm allergic to alcohol. They just want to keep me in that zone, not to even be tempted. I have a lot of friends who are sober who will not have a non-alcoholic drink. So there is a marketing, if you like the taste or if you want to, there's wines or champagnes that are non-alcoholic. And in my research, they're pretty safe. So I encourage people, if they feel like that's something they can handle, enjoy it, because I don't believe it's going to hurt them. I do think that there are people who will do that, and then the next thing you know, they're reaching for the real beer. And so I think there's a temptation there for some people. It's an addiction, so there's a weakness there that people propel themselves to the next level. I've been blessed with strength and power to not have those temptations. I've poured drinks for people now. I've gone to big parties. I socially adapted to who I am. And most of my friends never even ask me. They know if I'm gonna have anything, it's either water, tea, or a non-alcoholic beer. And I'll take my own with me.
So let's get into the nitty gritty. So say that there's somebody out there that is recovering or wants to recover or is questioning, kind of red flagging themselves. What things do you do to keep you on the straight and narrow?
Well, if the first thing anybody has to do if they want to quit drinking is they have to realize and acknowledge to themselves that they have a problem. And if they don't take that step, they'll never quit. They can quit dozens of times. They say, I'm going to quit drinking for a month. I'm going to quit for that. And then they're drinking again. That's not anybody that's in recovery. That's just someone who's quit drinking for a little while. Once you acknowledge that you have the problem, you have to be willing to tell somebody that you have a problem and seek help. And if you're not willing to take that next step, I mean, some people say, oh, I drink way too much, but they never want to acknowledge it and take the next step. There are tons of homes and facilities and groups that you can go to. There are medical facilities at hospitals. You can tell a doctor that you're an alcoholic and they'll guide you in the right direction. So if someone wants help, they can have it. If they're tinkering with whether they wanted to do it, mine became an evaluation of standing on a bridge. Should have been when I had the esophageal varices. Some people have an accident that stops them to drink. Some people lose a family, a divorce, and they make that choice they're never going to drink again. Unfortunately, sobriety is tough because after a few months, our mind says, well, I've been really good. I can have one now, I'm in control. But that one drink oftentimes leads to drinking again. And then you have to look at yourself and judge whether you want to do it for the second time. That's what happened to me. When I did the varices, I had the little sip. I thought I was cured. I thought I could do that. I couldn't. So I had to really make a mental state. I needed to quit permanently.
Science and pharmaceutical companies have come quite a long way. And as I understand, there are pills on the market to change the receptors from wanting alcohol. Is that a real thing? Does that actually work? Do you know anything about that?
I have no knowledge of that at all.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer that if you have to really look at yourself and decide what you want to gain back and what you're losing by drinking, and you have to make that choice to quit. And if you don't make that choice, I don't know that there's a lot of, I see a lot of people that wear patches to quit smoking and they still smoke. So even though there's stuff chemically that's supposed to help them, the mind's still the ultra power of the body, and it will make choices for you even if you don't think it does. It will give you that craving, that desire, that need to fulfill it differently than what you're getting from a pill or someplace else. That's just my thinking. But
all right, so give us your thinking. Do you want to read one of your poems?
I'd be happy to share a little bit of a couple of them.
Okay.
When I started these books, I tested them out. And when I started writing these poems, I'd go to coffee shops in Vancouver, Washington. I was a little surprised because there'd be a bunch of kids in there learning how to play guitar, and kids reading something from a school paper, and there was a lot of adults and a lot of kids. And I was invited by an owner of a bar. He said, why don't you come and read one of your poems? I was shocked that everybody got so quiet. And they actually wanted to hear what I had to say. And then they gave me a standing ovation for the words that I wrote. And I thought I was doing it for a group of bad alcoholics to try to keep them sober. And here was a group of people who didn't know it, who thought that the creative style of this. And so I decided to write the book in poetry once I started doing what I did. So one of the most popular poems is a one called The Devil Inside Me. I'll just read a couple of verses so that I can share another one as well.
Thank you.
And the devil inside me goes like this. There's this devil inside me, this insidious creep that lingers there for the taste of a brew. It's a drug or a drink that she wants in her life and doesn't care about the things it will do. She'll take all your life and wrinkle it up, twisting and turning you into a state of denial. She will ruin your life and those that you touch for your lifetime, not just for a while. You'll tell her to leave at your strongest of voice, and you'll seek help just to drive her away. But this devil inside you, this insidious creep, drives a wedge in your soul just to stay. So my purpose of this poem was if I were to write this in long prose, to get that same 3 verses out in a set of paragraphs, I would probably have to write 10 or 15 pages to try to get the same message. So poetry, like music, like words that we hear, lyrics, has a powerful way of being shortened and yet getting the message more powerful. So I decided to write my entire book in poems. The next one I'll share a little bit is called Romancing Death. It says, yes, romancing death has become my deepest of loves. I could have her with me every day, every night. She would quench my deep thirst and my strong appetite. She would make my whole life with her seem so right. And if someone I knew tried to change my mind about her, tell me that she was evil and wasn't good for me, I'd snub up my nose, make a strong comment, walk away. Romancing death was the only way that I could see. So you're probably wondering who she might be. I'd be asking that same question if I were you. She's the best cold champagne you could ever have in your life. She'll let you feel good and toast your life till you're through. You'll never need a special time or an event or a thought to pop the cork, pour a glass, have a drink. She's there to help you with things that upset your life. She confuses your mind so you don't have to think. Again, trying to realize that when you're an alcoholic, you're in love, you replace everybody with her. I call her her, it could be him, I guess, but because I don't want to be, you know, Pepper, but I called her her. I named the girl in my book. I also had sex addiction at the same time. Alcohol kind of drives you in that way. So her name was Sparky, because she was my stimulant. I could go into a bar, and if I drank a little more and I could buy a girl a drink, I thought life was pretty easy. And it was. When you have money and you're single, you know, it was a pretty easy scam to go through life. And alcoholics tell lies, they cheat on wives, they do lots of things that they normally would not do if they were sober being, if they realized that their drive and passion was being fueled by something that they wanted to add to them. Now,
Yeah,
the second book,
I think people with addiction, my ex-husband is an addictive person, and he did a lot of things that I don't think he would have done if he fully recovered, if that makes sense. So
it does. No, it does, because I found, you know, you have to do amends, you know, when you're as part of your recovery, and that's a tough deal to do, because in my period of drinking, which wasn't real long, I had a lot of friends in that age group that died. So I went through this real struggle with how do I be honest with myself and making all of my amends when some people are dead. So I wrote a poem that is a prayer to those people, apologizing for while I was here. And I hope when I see them, when I'm dead, that maybe they'll forgive me if they were watching me and they can see me. I'm really doing good things now. So I tried to cover all of the bases. And I think by writing this poetry and focusing, it allowed me to recover and get more permanent into the idea that I'm never going to drink again, because my passion was in the words that I wrote.
So we are going to air this around Christmas. So it's a tough time. Most people have a tough time with their family and the family drama and the bills and the consumerism that we seem to shove down everybody's throat. So it's a tough time of year for most people. Suicide rates go up. Addiction obviously is a big deal at this time. Do you have any suggestions or tips and tricks? And mind you, we are running out of time, but anything that you could offer that would be provocative enough for somebody to take one less drink or one less whatever?
You know what I did is I have a poem in here, what's under my Christmas tree in my book, because when I quit drinking, it was in August, and then I was going through this period of writing. And I think when I realized I had a Christmas tree with no presents in my home and my family had abandoned me, my mind told me that the biggest gift was that I had a Christmas tree, and the biggest gift that the representation of no presents, I could earn those back. I could do things in my life to get those back. If you have good friends that don't drink, that you know, and there's always someone in your family that doesn't drink, those are the people in the holidays you want to try to hang around if you're sober, and if you're working on sobriety, and try not to be alone. There are AA groups on Christmas Eve, on Christmas Day. You can go with people that are like-minded, that are trying to do the same thing you are, and you can have camaraderie and friendship, and there's meals and there's social events built around non-alcohol during the holidays. A lot of AA groups have big dinners, you know, and they have a feast, and a group of AA groups in a community will get together and help other. So don't put yourself alone in your house.
Yeah, I think that's the worst sometimes. For some people, that really makes the symptom harder to control or contain, because, you know, people get very lonely. I personally am not a holiday person, so I skate through it. Netflix, I'm excited. I'm very busy throughout the year, so it's like, woo, mandatory day off. But
do we have enough time? Do we have enough time to share one more quick poem?
Yes, and then you need to tell us where we can find more information, and then we have to go.
Okay, I got it. All right, this is a real quick story. As I met a bunch of Boy Scouts at the Dallas airport, and they were going on jamboree, so I thanked them for their service, and they told me they weren't in the service. I said, no, I mean as young men becoming leaders, and they tested me, and they said, were you ever scout? And I said, yeah, I was. I said, back in the late 50s, early 60s, I was a Boy Scout. And they said, prove it. I said, easy. A scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. And they all dropped their lips. He said, how could that guy remember it? And I said, once a scout, always a scout. So my new book I wrote a poem called Giving Back Like a Boy Scout. I'll just share the first part of it. Actually, I'll just go into the middle of it. I think it's probably easier. I start with: the scout is trustworthy, loyal, and helpful. He is friendly, courteous, and kind. He's obedient, cheerful, and thrifty, clean and reverent all of the time. So let's talk about now giving back and some things that you can do to share your purpose of the newfound heart with others, not just you. And then I talk about volunteering at things and things that you can do in a community, and then decided to define it one more time. It says you can be trustworthy for the things you say and do. You can be loyal to yourself. You can be helpful to the folks out there and be friendly with your help. You can be courteous to everyone you meet and be kind even if you disagree. You can be obedient to the time you have and be cheerful in what you see. You can be thrifty with the time each day and be brave as you tackle empty hours. You will stay clean and sober with every day and be reverent to your highest power. And it's a poem about giving back to like a Boy Scout. And I encourage people who are becoming sober that you have to get involved with things outside of your world. You need to give your time to something. You need to walk people home, an old lady that's carrying groceries. You need to cut someone's lawn if they can't do it. You need to give back, because once you start giving back, the alcohol desire starts disappearing, because the amount of activity that goes through your brain that gets you excited is so much different. Now, to reach me is really easy. If you can remember my name, Art Wedmore, you can find me at www.artwedmore.com. And my books are on Amazon and Kindle Books.
Yay! Thank you, Art. I'm so glad that you didn't die. That's kind of an important
I am too.
That's like really important. And I'm glad that you're writing poetry. There's nothing more special than poetry. I've been an addict. That is my true addiction, is poetry, my whole life. So I love the fact that you put it in a way that has texture. Not to say that writing doesn't, it does, I'm a writer, but poetry just has an extra to it.
It does.
Thank you for all that you do.
If you email your address to me, I'll send you a copy of each one of my books signed.
Shut up. Yes, I feel spoiled. Thank you. Yay, Merry Christmas to me.
Give me where to send them. I'll send them to you.
All right, thanks, Art. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It's a blessing meeting you.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.
You're watching Living and Thriving with Rusty. I'm Rusty, and guess what? I found a soul brother. See, he's all about doing kind things too. And guess what? It's an extra winner chicken dinner, because when you're doing something kind, you're not going to the drink. I love that aspect. I love it. Keep yourself busy in a positive and healthy way. Get it? So know that you're loved, know that you're beautiful. And again, as I say in every show, do something kind. It doesn't hurt you. You're not going to die. You're not going to have a heart attack. You don't need to have paparazzi. You don't need to Facebook it. Buying a cup of coffee, paying for a toll, cleaning out your closet, cleaning out your cupboards. I'm sure you've got food in there you ain't gonna eat. You thought you were, you forgot about it. The church would love it. Go and volunteer at the church. Even if you're not a religious type, there are homeless people that go to churches to eat because that's their only hot meal. You can do this. You can wash dishes. You can make stuffing. You know what? You can fold napkins. Do something good and productive and healthy. And until then, see you next time.